Okay, we're back. Believe it or not, page 100. We're at chapter 12, Devadatta, 8 important points. Point 1, concerning Devadatta, who is, of course, a very, very evil person. Volume 8 of Words and Phrases says, his original state is pure and cool, but he manifested form. In manifested form, he showed himself as fever of heavenly beings. Okay, now there's an asterisk there. So in China, the name Devadatta was translated as fever of heavenly beings. Okay, the record of the orally transmitted teaching says Devadatta, this evil dude, in his original state, is the Bodhisattva Manjushri, or Manjushri. Manjushri. Therefore, if his original state is described as pure and cool, in his manifested form, he is called Devadatta. Hence, it is said that he showed himself as fever of heavenly beings. Because if he's Manjushri, then he's a very close disciple of Shakyamuni from ancient times. Cool and pure and cool is indicative of water and stands for the principle that the sufferings of birth and death are none other than nirvana. Fever of heavenly beings is indicative of the fire and stands for the principle that earthly desires are none other than enlightenment. Now, when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, they are showing that earthly desires are enlightenment. We can want things, we can have desires, and they can actually lead us to be able to get to Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. If the desire becomes to become the Buddha instead of just getting stuff. Now, that's something that can only happen within you, how you perceive the Gohonzon and your practice, okay? But when you decide to devote yourself to the propagation of the law for widespread propagation, then you're in a different mindset and you're in a different kind of functional category than you were when you were in the earlier stages of the 6 stages of faith, of practice, right? So he says, now when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, they are showing that earthly desires and enlightenment, they didn't have to become, cause awakened ones to get there as part of the steps, and that the sufferings of birth and death are nirvana, because we get to be Buddhas in our present form. We get to know that we're Buddhas in our present form, okay? Devadatta is another name for Myoho Renge Kyo. So how bad a guy could he really be? Just like every other evil person, he has a Buddha nature. Very obviously, if the Daishonin is now referring to him as, it's just another name for Myoho Renge Kyo. This example of Devadatta is another name for Myoho Renge Kyo, inclusive of all things, perfect and full. Okay, in a past existence, he was the seer Asita. The seer Asita is another name for Myoho, the wonderful law. Okay, so I wonder what this seer taught. The syllable A in Asita means not or without. The law without self. The law without self is Myoho. Okay, the wonderful law. In other words, the law is there even after you go into non-substantiality. The law is ever present in the Dharma realm, which doesn't disappear because you did. Okay? So the bottom line is that the syllable A in Asita means not or without. The law without self is Myoho. It's mystic and it never changes. So it's unfathomably consistent. All right, the wonderful law, this thus, volume 8 of Words and Phrases, Tentai says, one takes the law that is without self and cleanses the living beings with it. So he's got to be talking about Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, because that's the only law that does that, because that has the simultaneity of cause and effect to be able to do that. It's not a cause and then there's got to be a reflective effect that's separate. It's the simultaneity of cause and effect that allows us to morph reality based on our life condition and the strength of our faith and the purpose of our prayer. The law without self, the wonderful law. But thus, volume 8 of Words and Phrases, 10th, I says, one takes the law that is without self and cleanses living beings with it. Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. The seer asceta is another name for the 3,000 worlds of the Dharma realm. Because if is another name for if Devadatta is another name for Myoho Renge Kyo, then we have to perceive the mention of Devadatta throughout from that point on. When that clarification occurred, we could no longer look at him as the evil Devadatta that was the opponent of Shakyamuni and rolled the boulder down and hurt his toe. Okay, that's not what we should be thinking. We should be thinking about it from the profound effect that him being in the life of the Buddha, according to Shakyamuni, as his mentor actually, that Shakyamuni was able to preach the law, that he didn't reveal what its name was. Okay, but he's able to take everybody through the expedient means of the earlier sutras to the Supreme Sutra of the Lotus Sutra, and there lay down the groundwork for the latter day of the law when Nam Myoho Renge Kyo could come about, and the Daishonin could distill all of this into a very understandable and very utilizable construction. I mean, our practice and faith, if we have it tuned correctly and in accord with the Daishonin's teaching, allows us to pretty much become undefeated throughout our lives. Okay? And to be able to go into non-substantiality in that state, kings don't have it better than that. No way. Richest people don't have it better than that. No way. Okay? Happiest go lucky people with no problems can't touch that. Can't touch that fortune. All right? So he says, the seer asceta is another name for the 3,000 worlds of the Dharma realm, which expresses to us that we have Buddhahood as an innate part of our reality as from birth, that we're eternally endowed with the three bodies. Therefore, it is described as being without self, because it's not just based on me or you or a certainty. It's based on the thing that everything equally has in it, okay? Which is Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. The seer asceta is another name for the 3,000 worlds of the Dharma realm. Therefore, it is described as with being without self. You should think about this principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. And I have. Okay, so I'm reading it to you so you can hear him tell you, you should be as well. You should have also. You need to as well. All right? Point 2, quit seeing evil people as forever bad, and that they're going to go to hell, and that, there's no salvation for them. That's bullshit. Okay? Total bullshit. There's nobody out there suffering right now that's in hell that can't change that in a single moment of life. All it takes is an understanding what's being said and even a moment of life's worth of faith to allow that to reverberate and come to the surface of your life again. Okay? Really. None of you should ever give up. I've been through a lot of difficulty to get to this point in my life. And all of that difficulty actually was my asceta. It was my seer teaching me the principles of the truth. And it's only on that basis that I'm able to preach the law now, because I always obey, as we'll get into in a minute. Point 2, on the passage, at that time, there was a seer who came to the king and said, I have a great vehicle text called the Sutra of the Lotus of the Wonderful Law. If you will never disobey me, I will expound it for you. Okay? My goodness, I didn't know that I was referring to something was the next thing I was going to read. Hang on. This is going to tear you up. All right. Point 2, on the passage, at that time there was a seer who came to the king and said, I have a great vehicle text, which would be, I have a Mahayana text called the Sutra of the Lotus of the Wonderful Law. If you will never disobey me, the seer says to the king, if you never disobey me, or if you will never disobey me, I will expound it for you. Okay, now the Daishonin is going to go into a clarity of what that kind of wording of a passage would mean to us now in the latter day with Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, with regard to the expounding of the Lotus Sutra, one should understand the meaning. One should understand the meaning of the passage. If you will never disobey me, I will expound it for you to be. Okay? And now he's going to give an explanation of the meaning of that, but he's going to mix up some words. And I'm going to go down here because I know I'm going to get to this little cross thing. Anyhow, so it's the sentence consists of 7 characters. If you will never disobey me, if you will expound it, for I will expound it for you. Nichiren reads the character for if you and reconstructs the sentence as follows. You never disobey me, you bodhisattvas of the earth. You never disobey me, the original teacher of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And so you are qualified to expound it. And so you are qualified to expound it. So trust me, I have no compunctions about expounding it because I never disobey my master. That's what makes me cry. Okay, so let me just say it again. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, with regard to the expounding of the Lotus Sutra, one should understand the meaning of the passage. If you never disobey me, I will expound it for you. To be, you never disobey me, and so you are qualified to expound it. The character for if can be read as the pronoun you. Commenting on this in volume 8 of Words and Phrases, Tentai says, the king will receive the teaching and honor and practice it. Now Nichiren's followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. They do not disobey him, and so they are qualified to expound the law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. The seer Asita represents Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. We become the seer instead of Devadatta. We go from Devadatta back to Devadatta's original state as the seer that taught Shakyamuni. Okay? Point 3. That's pretty badass as far as I'm concerned. Point 3 on the top of page 102. In the passage, at once he, the king, accompanied the seer, providing him with whatever he needed, picking fruit, drawing water, gathering firewood, setting out meals. He served the seer in this manner for 1,000 years, all for the sake of the law. All for the sake of the law. That's what you've got to have as the burning desire in your life, for the sake of the law. That's the only time you'll be able to not begrudge your life. That's the only time that the way you ride is to not care about anything other than trying to do Kosen Rufu and convince other people to embrace the teaching that you have embraced, for them to receive the reward that you have received. That's gratitude. So, point 3, at once he, the king, accompanied the seer, providing him with whatever he needed, picking fruit, drawing water, gathering firewood, setting out meals. He served the seer in this manner for 1,000 years, all for the sake of the law, working diligently, acting as a provider, and seeing to it that the seer lacked for nothing. That's the way we're supposed to uphold our faith and the Sangha that we're practicing with, frankly. Okay? The record of the orally transmitted teachings clarifies on page 102, picking fruit applies to the earthly desires or defilement of foolishness. Okay? Drawing water applies to the earthly defilement of greed. Gathering firewood applies to the earthly defilement of anger. Setting out meals applies to the earthly defilement of arrogance. Okay? In this passage, the 8 kinds of services performed by the king for the seer Asita are listed. The king did not carry out any other actions outside of these in order to receive the transmission of Myoho Renge-kyo. Now when Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, they are carrying out such acts of service for a period of 1,000 years. Such services represent the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. This is what is needed to overcome greed, foolishness, and arrogance. Okay, but when do we become hip to that? Okay, let me go backwards a little bit to explain what I think he's basically clarified here. Okay, our original state is Buddhahood. All right, so we express defilement for the sake of expressing it, for the sake of being able to preach the law. Because we never disobey, we are capable. What's the words that he used? Pardon me, hang on, it's on point two. You never disobey me, and so you are qualified. That's the word I'm talking. The reason we're qualified is that even though we're Buddhas, we voluntarily go through all the funky shit to have it into our repertoire of wisdom and knowledge and understanding and life experience for the sake of being able to propagate the law of Nam-myoho-renge-kyo later as we're able to get to stage 6. Okay? So that's what that's really saying. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, picking fruit. This is what the king did for the seer. And then he also clarifies at the end, that's all the king had to do, was to do this stuff for the seer. There's the only things that he did in order to receive the law. Okay, but now he's qualifying what those things he did as actual defilements. Okay, all right, so he's saying applies to the earthly that is desire or defilement of foolishness. So we experience foolishness, we experience greed, we experience the defilement of anger, and we experience the defilement of arrogance, okay, which is not one of the 3 poisons. Arrogance is the first of the 14 slanders, which means it's what leads to all the rest of the slander, frankly. Okay, but the bottom line is, why, as Buddhas, if we're born of the 3 bodies, where did the karma come from to have to go through the bullshit? Okay, why did we have to be born with foolishness, greed, anger, and arrogance? Okay, because we couldn't be human beings that were capable of preaching the law correctly without the basis of reality that everyone experiences being a part of our own experience. Okay, so that's what that's saying. You owe to your you owe your Buddhahood to all the bullshit you've been through that you've never given up over. Point 4, page 102. I told you I wasn't going to cry. How could you not? Point 4 on the words, because the wonderful law was in his thoughts, he never flagged in body or mind. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says these 2 words, body and mind, refer to the transmission of the teachings that our bodies and our minds are the wonderful law. Okay, our bodies and minds are the Buddha. Okay, the Buddha of the original state. Okay, Nichiren and his followers chant Nam-myoho-renge-kyo and thus attain Buddhahood in their present forms. Never flagging in body or mind refers to their embodiment. We're all living embodiments of Nam-myoho-renge-kyo if we're the disciples of Nichiren. Never flagging in body or mind refers to their embodiment of the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. We actually have attained Buddhahood in our present form. We've reached stage 6. Point 5 on the passage Manjushri. Manjushri. Point 5 on the passage Manjushri said, when I was in the ocean, I constantly expounded the Lotus Sutra of the wonderful law alone. Alone. Manjushri says, that's all I taught the Dragon King's daughter and her dad. Okay? Alone. The record of the orally transmitted teaching says, I refers to Manjushri. Manjushri. The ocean is the ocean of the sufferings of birth and death. The word alone is and or only corresponds to that in the passage there is only the law of the one vehicle. Chapter 2, expedient means. The word constantly or always corresponds to that in the passage. I am always here preaching the law. Chapter 16, lifespan. Pardon me. The word constantly or always corresponds to that in the passage. I am always here preaching the law, chapter 16, lifespan. Myoho Rengekyo is the words and sounds of the Dharma realm. The passage refers to Nichiren and his followers who now chant Nam Myoho Rengekyo. That's what the passage refers to. Manjushri's explanation, okay, is that he only taught the Lotus Sutra. He didn't do any provisional teachings while he's in the ocean teaching the Dragon King and his daughter. Okay? You don't need those provisional teachings if you can go straight to the Lotus, obviously. That's what the whole point is. And the whole point of the Lotus is to awaken within you the fact that you're already the Buddha, eternally endowed with the three bodies. You too are an entity of the mystic law. And that wisdom, the passage refers to Nichiren and his followers who chant Nam Myoho Rengekyo. The ocean of the sufferings of birth and death, the bullshit we go through to get where we get, is none other than the great ocean of the true aspect of reality, the great ocean of Nam Myoho Rengekyo. I represents the wisdom of the Dharma realm, which allows us to perceive that the bullshit is a bullshit is really a good thing. We wouldn't be able to function as the Buddha in our present form in the absence of that. Okay, bullshit. The ocean of the sufferings of birth and death is nothing than the great ocean of the true aspect of all reality, the great ocean of Nam Myoho Rengekyo. I represents the wisdom of the Dharma realm, the wisdom to perceive this truth, which is personified in Manjushri. Manjushri. Okay? Point 6. On the passage, there is a daughter on page 103 of the Dragon King Sagara. Okay, sorry, I'm doing it. There is it's 2 beats instead of 1. There is a daughter of the Dragon King Sagara who had just turned 8. Her wisdom has keen roots and she is good at understanding the root activities and deeds of living beings. She has mastered the Dharanis, that is, has gained the power to memorize the Buddha's teachings. He has been able to accept and embrace all the storehouse of profound secrets preached by the Buddhas, has entered deep into meditation, thoroughly grasped the doctrines, and in the space of an instant conceived the desire for a Bodhi and reached the level of no regression. Her eloquence knows no hindrance, and she thinks of living beings with compassion as though they were her own children. She is fully endowed with blessings, and when it comes to conceiving in mind and expounding my mouth, she is subtle, wonderful, comprehensive, and great. Kind, compassionate, benevolent, yielding. She is gentle and refined, and will capable of attaining Bodhi. Okay, he's talking about the Dragon King's daughter now, right? Okay, so we're off of Devadatta and we're on to the Dragon King's daughter, which is not human. Okay, she's one of the other entities that were present at the assembly. Okay, and she's been being taught by Manjushri, who has just clarified that all he taught when he was in the ocean with the Dragon King was the Lotus Sutra. He didn't do any provisional teachings, okay? And now he's qualifying, when he's being challenged actually in the text that precedes this, give me one example of somebody that's attained Buddhahood in their present form. I think that Sherry Putra is saying, where are you getting this, okay? And Manjushri says, I know somebody that could demonstrate this to you. And that's when he discusses and describes the Dragon King's daughter. Okay, and all of those aspects of the Dragon King's daughter are aspects of your own life as well. Actually, your wisdom has keen roots, so does yours. And she has a good understanding of the root activities and deeds of living beings. She understands people, okay? She has we understand people. She has mastered the Dharanis, the incantations, the magical formulas, that is, gain the power to memorize the Buddha's teachings. That's what that actually represents, rather than memorizing the magical incantations. Has been able to accept and embrace all the storehouse of profound secrets preached by the Buddhas. We do too. And has by chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, simply that already contains the whole storehouse of everything the Buddha ever knew. Has entered deep into meditation. We have to have our own process in front of the Gohonzon, where we think about all these things we're hearing, and we put ABC together in our own reward mind, and then we start learning from the teacherless law of life itself. Okay? Thoroughly grasp the doctrines, and in the space of an instant, because this all happens in that single moment of life when you perceive yourself in reality to be the Buddha exactly as you are, and reach the level of no regression, because you just did. When you did that, you'll be the Buddha in every lifetime. Her eloquence knows no hindrance, because though anybody able to do this is going to be eloquent. And she thinks of living beings with compassion as though they were her own children. For these teachers of the law, the only reason they teach the law is out of gratitude. They don't do it for benefit in any way, shape, or form. It has nothing to do with it. It's the compassion of wanting people that don't understand the teaching correctly to understand it correctly. That's why Nichiren has just gone back through and gone through this stuff for us for the latter day, the latter age, when the Lotus Sutra has become a provisional teaching. It's lost its power after the second 1,000 years. It's all there in the in the sutra. I can't remember the sutra it's in. It's in the Great Collection Sutra. Pardon me. Thank you. All right, thank you, mind. She is wonderful. She's subtle, wonderful, comprehensive, and great, kind, compassionate, benevolent, yielding. She is gentle and refined in will, capable of attaining Bodhi. Okay, Bodhi. Okay, the record of the orally transmitted teaching, age 8, is symbolic of the 8 volumes of the Lotus Sutra. Devadatta stands for the world of hell, and the Dragon King's daughter stands for the world of Buddhahood. Thus, together, they represent the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, that is, the 100 worlds and 1,000 factors. Because after we get to the 10 times 10 of the 100 worlds, we go 10 factors, right? As part of the multiplication. All right. Or in 1,000 factors, or the principle of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Or again, we may say that the age 8 represents the 8 volumes of the Lotus Sutra and the 8 sufferings that we undergo because of our earthly desires. We should understand, therefore, that the attainment of Buddhahood embodied in the Lotus Sutra is symbolized by the age 8 of the Dragon Girl. There are also 8 stages of gestation for a Buddha. Okay, somebody that's actually made the karmic cause to become enlightened in their manifest form when they enter back into the Sahe world. All right, so 8 is kind of significant. So the 8 sufferings are none other than the 8 volumes of the Lotus Sutra, and the 8 sufferings and the 8 volumes are personified in the girl who is 8 years old. So the sufferings and the sutra itself are personified by this living being. So are we, okay? One interpretation reads the words age 8 as the opening of a jewel. The age or jewel is the single mind of the Dragon Girl. The age stands for the opening of her mind to the 3,000 realms, to the fact that she has the potential to be the Buddha. She is already the Buddha. The 3,000 realms are the 8 volumes of the Lotus Sutra. Thus, the words age 8 are representative of the opening of the door of Buddha wisdom. The passage from the words her wisdom has keen roots on down to the words she is capable of attaining Bodhi describes how she had Bodhi, how she has pardon me, this doesn't have a macron, so it's just Bodhi. Describes how she has accepted and taken faith in the Lotus Sutra. The words when it comes to conceiving in mind and expounding my mouth relate to the work of the mouth or verbal actions. The words she is gentle and refined in will refers to the work of or will of the mental actions. The word she has been able to accept and embrace the storehouse of profound secrets, has entered into a deep meditation, refer to the work of the body or physical actions. These are the three categories of action that are none other than the three virtues of the Dharma body, wisdom, and emancipation, the three bodies of which we are eternally endowed. They represent the Dharma nature or the three truths. Okay? Again, we may say that the words conceiving in mind stand for a single moment of life. The words expounded by mouth stand for the 3,000 realms. The words has been able to accept and embrace describe how the dragon girl has accepted and embraced the Lotus Sutra. The word age or jewel is a wish-granting jewel, which you can get anything from, even more wish-granting jewels, namely the wonderful law, which is Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Age or jewel is a wish-granting jewel, namely the wonderful law, namely Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. The word 8 or opening reveals that the body and mind of the dragon girl are the wonderful law. They are the Buddha. They are Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. And there we'll pause and come back to point 7 of Devadatta chapter when we see each other next time. Thank you.